Now,
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It is Friday. So glad you could join us all today. I'm Andrew Langer in for Larry O'Connor here on O'Connor and Company, and joining me as she does on every Friday, Patrice Onwuka. Hello, Patrice.
Hello, Andrew. Happy Friday.
Happy Holiday Friday to you as well. It is 7:07 on News Talk 105.9 WMAL. We are making sense of the news. Listen, the next hour of the show, we're going to be joined by Nizam Ali from Ben's Chili Bowl. Talk about Virginia Ali's 90th birthday and the celebration last night, which was just wonderful. I was there.
Oh, boy.
It was great. Bram Weinstein is going to talk to us about the Commanders at the Rams this weekend out in Los Angeles. Because, yes, I say it with the hard G. What's going to happen there? What can we look forward to anything? Joining us right now, though, is David Duncan. He is the CEO of the American Battlefield Trust. Yesterday, we talked with Yesli Vega, who's on the Prince William County Board of Supervisors, about this conflict down there. They had a 27-hour Board of Supervisors meeting, Patrice, 27 hours to talk about this issue of data centers. And I said something about, it's not just the Manassas battlefield. There's also a state park that's on the other side of where these data centers are going to go. And I talked about, the Virginia Antiquities Act, and I said, so we should talk to somebody like the American Battlefield Trust. So, David, welcome to the show. Let's talk about this situation. What's the perspective of the American Battlefield Trust here on this data center issue?
Well, good morning, Andrew and Patrice. Thank you so much for having me on. I think, first of all, as a national historic preservation organization, what I always tell people is, first and foremost, we're not against data centers.
Yeah.
We also have a robust education effort as well. Excuse me. And we want people to visit our website and the thousands of pages of content we have there. We want people to sign up and watch videos that we have on our YouTube channel. And so we understand the modern world and the need for these things. We just believe that there are appropriate places for them, and immediately adjacent to, in this case, a major national battlefield, which saw two tremendous conflicts that helped shape the course of our nation, is an absolutely inappropriate place for something like this. Primarily because the people who come to visit historic sites like the Manassas battlefield want to come and be immersed in the history. They want to experience the full power of place and not necessarily have a 60 or a 100-foot data center looming over them as they explore the battlefield.
Well, David, I can absolutely appreciate that. And it sounds like there are a lot of residents, including some who came in full reenactment battle regalia, who showed up in opposition during the public hearing. To play devil's advocate, though, it seems like this would be potentially a big financial boon for the area, and would certainly bring a little. I understand you're not necessarily in support of modernizing that area, but that there could be some different benefits to having those data centers there. How do you respond to that, to the opponents?
Well, I think. And I listened to a little bit of the commentary during the 27-hour marathon earlier this week. And from our perspective, it's not just the history. What absolutely as important as the history is, and we believe it should be preserved for future generations, I was a little surprised at how cavalierly the economic benefits of a preserved battlefield were just ignored.
Right.
And Manassas generates, most years between 500,000 and maybe closer to 600,000 visitors. Many of those are local for sure, but many of them are not. They come from all over the world. And we have done study after study over the years that shows that the average heritage or history traveler is one of the most valuable tourists that you can attract to your locality. So if you are lucky enough to have a preserved battlefield in your community, well, that's an economic engine.
Yeah.
And our perspective is you probably ought to be working harder to protect that rather than to degrade it.
That's an important point, because I was up at Antietam last year, and it was actually earlier this year. Now that I think about it, it was earlier, and it was it really was an amazing experience. I'm admittedly out to the Manassas battlefield in a bit, and I need to get back out there. Here was my question that came up yesterday, David, and we're talking with David Duncan. He's the CEO of the American Battlefield Trust. Virginia's got some very robust laws on the books, even protecting historic artifacts that are found on private property. How does that play into all of this, or does it?
Well, for us, we're primarily focused on just the battlefield lands, but we've had discussions with state officials, and the general consensus is Virginia is in a very unique situation because there are so many battlefields, primarily from the Civil War, but even from the Revolutionary War in Virginia, and we ought to be able to find a way to do both.
Sure.
We ought to be able to have technology corridors where there are appropriate places for data centers and warehouse distribution centers, which are also threatening battlefields. All of these things go together. The data from the data centers feeds the warehouse distribution centers, which are also popping up everywhere because of the demand coming out of the pandemic. But the overarching argument is that we should be able to do both.
Right.
And both aspects should be able to contribute to Virginia's robust and growing economy, especially as we head into the 250th anniversary of the country, the semi-quincentennial. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember the bicentennial.
Oh, yes.
I certainly am.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a big deal for the country. Yeah. So we ought to be preserving and promoting those sites in advance of what I hope would be the largest history commemoration in the history of the country.
It's real quick, Patrice, before you jump in, because you and I, you're a new colleague at the American Battlefield Trust. My friend Sean McBurney, he was working on that 250th anniversary. I was very interested in that because I've come to a lot of my beliefs and values because of the bicentennial 1976 being steeped in that American history. So it's important. I know you have a question, Patrice.
Well, I'm just thinking, what's the next step, David? What can be done? I mean, the county board of supervisors, they've green-lighted this plan. So, is there a legal step next, or what can be done to stop this plan from going into place?
Well, Patrice, that's a great question, and I think we're still assessing our options. You have to look at the vote, and I believe it was 4-3 with one abstention. So this thing came within a whisker of not passing. So I think that's indicative of, this was not a slam dunk for the data center folks. They just barely squeaked by. But so I think we're still assessing, working with some of the local folks there as well to see what our options are and how we want to move forward. If anything, this, I think, serves as a cautionary tale for what can happen at other battlefields as well. And so we'll certainly be pointing to it as situations that we would like to avoid in the future.
Well, David Duncan, listen, I appreciate you coming on early on a Friday morning. Best of luck to you, sir. We're going to continue to watch this issue.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on.
Take care. That was David Duncan. He is the CEO of the American Battlefield Trust. And there's all kinds of things. I know we'll continue to watch it here at O'Connor Company. First, it's 7:15 a.m. WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes. First on the fives, here's Jamie Whidden in the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live
from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
WMAL, making sense of party politics because somebody's got to hold their feet to the fire. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
So, Patrice, as we've been talking about this possible move, most likely move of the Caps and the Wizards out to Potomac Yards, and by the way, as we just hear, as we hear Jamie talking about what's going on with the Metro downtown, you just know that there's a reason why this stuff is happening, that things are moving. You and I were talking in the first hour about what's going to happen to that Penn Quarter area, around the FBI headquarters. Much in the same way that I remember the Bicentennial, I do remember the early 90s before what was then what the MCI Center was put in, now the Capital One Arena. What that area was like, and the revitalization that has occurred. One of the things that they said was that we should maybe redevelop the FBI headquarters, because the FBI headquarters is moving, by the way.
Yes.
Which is
to Maryland.
To Maryland, which is really interesting to me that they're moving to Greenbelt. And I guess there are federal facilities there. There's the NASA building. There's a USDA building up. God knows that's all that the top side of the Beltway needs is yet another government facility.
I know.
But I say this, and then, of course, I talk about the fact that the FBI has a huge amount of land down in Quantico, Virginia, and I understand Springfield wasn't ideal, but maybe moving it down to Quantico might make sense. More than 15 years after the federal government originally planned for a new FBI headquarters, the crumbling J. Edgar Hoover building is breaking down in ways that hamper the agency's mission. Nets around the building. I've seen those nets keep chunks of concrete from falling off and hitting pedestrians. It is.
Oh my gosh!
It is astounding to me. But yeah, so there's lots of chicanery going on about the FBI says that picking the suburban Maryland for its new headquarters surprised the agency. The GSA rejected an advisory panel's recommendation on a site in Springfield, Virginia, which would have been time out for a second, which would have been interesting. I don't know specifically where it was in Springfield. I suspect it would have been where the relatively new National Geospatial Intelligence Agency headquarters is down there, because you've got all of this land around Fort Belvoir, including I think it's the Davison Army Airfield that's down there. So there's a lot of space down there as well. Instead, they moved it up there because of equity issues. As I say this, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Patrice.
Well, so chicanery is the right word, because it seems like there are no good reasons or explanations for why the decision had been made to move it to the building to Greenbelt, other than the racial demographic, I guess, of the area in Greenbelt would be different than in Springfield. Certainly a lot more people of color over there. Maybe there's other nefarious reasons going behind the scenes that we don't know about, and hopefully we'll get to the bottom of this. But at this point, I hope they just level where the current FBI building is. I actually don't want them to develop it. Put a park there. Let's have a beautiful direct sight view from, the Caps, if the Caps stay, from that building straight down to the National Mall. Let's just get rid of that whole area and just keep it simple, keep it clean. Don't put more housing there, because frankly, there's no one moving to the city
you
to live there.
An important point. We've got so much empty real estate in the district now, and I will say this: I was looking at apartments for a family member yesterday, and some buildings that had been converted from office buildings in Northern Virginia into apartments that were just gorgeous.
Yeah.
So if we really need, again, you could put more housing in if you, again, to sort of increase the housing stock, maybe, lower rent prices.
But it's not. That's the problem.
No. Yeah, no, I understand this, but time out for a second. Just stay with me. I agree with you here. Converting it to apartments, I was someone who thought that they should have converted converted RFK Stadium to apartments, which would have been a fascinating way to do this. Now I don't even know I don't think there is anything in there now. But you are right. It is an area that would benefit from a little bit more park space. They do a farmers market over there on what is that, 8th between D, E, and F.
Yes, I know
and then one over on F. Yes, and so that could be a space
market
for some. Yes, that's right. Yeah. So they could do that there. But again, you come down to this situation where folks are using a racial or ethnic prism to look at things, and for what, I don't know. I don't know what benefit of putting the FBI headquarters in Greenbelt, right? And which which ethnic makeup are they looking at? Because it's not as though Fairfax County isn't widely diverse with, with the Latino community, with the Asian American community, frankly, with folks who are not just African American, but, folks who have migrated from Africa now.
Yeah.
And so that is just astounding to me. We're going to continue to watch this here. It's 7:22 here on WMAL. Oh my goodness. So, just when you thought it couldn't get any stranger, Patrice, we have Claudine Gay trying to do the right thing up at Harvard by lighting a menorah.
Okay.
And somebody thought it would be a good idea to hand her a tiki torch in order to do it. I mean, this poor woman, I obviously no great sympathy for Claudine Gay, but she just can't get a break in terms of the lack of optics here. This is beyond parody, the situation, lighting a menorah with a tiki torch. Your thoughts here?
I mean, has the menorah been lit with anything else other than a tiki torch? I got to believe there must have been something else that could have been given to her to use. But as we were talking about earlier,
creme brulee torch,
the creme brulee torch, lots of things, a match.
Yes.
But the idea of tiki torches, has been in the political realm, has been attached now to white supremacists, people who want to see monuments, Civil War monuments kept up.
Right.
And so to see her, maybe she's reclaiming the imagery, and now instead of she's using it in this way. I'm trying my best to help this woman out. But,
see the bright in the
see
best
the bright
light.
side, right? Yeah, exactly. There's nothing else just to say, but this is an embarrassment, and the smallest embarrassment she's experienced in the past 2 weeks.
Sure. Yes. It just keeps her in the news. How about this as a general precept for right now? Unless you are in your backyard having a party around an actual tiki bar, how about you don't use tiki torches in official public? A handy tip from those of us here at O'Connor and Company.
Good idea.
Creepy gingerbread man on the range in the DC area. We're going to talk about this at 7:30 on WMAL.
WMAL FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
News now
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It is 7:37 on News Talk 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news. Happy Friday to all of you. Good morning, Patrice. How are you doing?
Good morning, Andrew. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, a holiday Friday for all of you.
Friday.
I'm Andrew Langer. As I said, this is O'Connor and Company. We got the next hour. We got Nizam Ali from Ben's Chili Bowl talking about his mom's 90th birthday, and you're going to hear me get emotional. I'm going to try not to get emotional. It's a family that I love very dearly. I have a special place in my heart. Bram Weinstein is going to be joining us to talk about the Washington Commanders and their game against the LA Rams. But someone's got to explain to me what is going on in Arlington. You Arlington people. What's going on in Arlington? I mean, please tweet at me at Andrew_Langer. You don't have to bother Patrice with my craziness here as I'm taking you all to task. You got houses blowing up, and we don't know why. Crazy. We don't know what's going on. And now this strange report of a guy. I'm sorry. First of all, I don't know who's in the suit, and I don't know
the pronouns.
How dare I gender this gingerbread person? Yes. A gingerbread person, thank you, walking around Arlington, an Arlington neighborhood out I think towards Ballston. Here is WUSA 9 reporting on this.
So guys, imagine sitting down to dinner with your family. Your Ring app notifications go off, but it's not a delivery driver. It's not a neighbor. Nope. It is the gingerbread man. Yes, this guy right here, hanging out outside of your home.
We have a big picture window that faces North George Mason, and all of a sudden I heard my dogs going crazy, barking out the window, and I went to look, and there was a giant blow-up gingerbread man costume out on the sidewalk.
Lindsay Churchill says she didn't know what to make of it.
We kind of locked eyes, and the gingerbread man went on his way. So weird.
But less than an hour later, he showed up outside another home along George Mason Drive in Arlington.
My wife said, hey, listen, there's this guy. He didn't ring the doorbell. He's just standing there. He's in this gingerbread man costume. I'm like, gingerbread man? What?
This man, who asked us not to disclose his identity, says they didn't know what to do, so they just watched.
Also, we noticed the door was trying to be pushed. We looked at the camera. I'm looking at this guy in the costume.
He felt like he needed to report it to someone, so we called the non-emergency police line.
I just told him, listen, I just want to report this. This is not an emergency, but some guy came with a gingerbread man costume. And they're like, a gingerbread man? I'm like, yes, a gingerbread man costume. I have the video.
Several neighbors told WUSA 9 they saw the gingerbread man along George Mason Drive throughout the evening on Wednesday. And while he certainly didn't run, he also wasn't caught. And it's left these neighbors feeling a bit unnerved.
It is kind of like a horror movie, but in this costume, this whole ordeal, what was the goal? Is it just to see if we're home, or was it to actually enter the house? That's the stuff that, we're not really sure, but it's a good thing we had our door locked.
It was not holly jolly.
I hate the fact.
Oh, boy.
I hate the fact that I am suspicious and concerned by this story. I wish we were living in a world where somebody dressed in a gingerbread suit walking around at Christmas could be something benign or joyful. But right, I mean, immediately what came to mind was the movie The Purge. And the people who show up in the masks at the Purge. And the guy going in, this is, I would love it if it was just somebody doing a prank. And, then you could just say, listen, maybe in this day and age, it's not the best idea to do this. Because also, by the way, you could very well get hurt. I mean, am I wrong here? Am I off base, Patrice?
You're wrong. Yeah. You're wrong.
Okay.
When I saw this story, my heart melted. And I said, if he had come to my house, I would have opened the door. I might have maybe let him in. Well, we usually don't let strangers in. But, I would have opened the door, smiled. In part because in our neighborhood, in our town, they just did a police and fire Santa drive-through in the evening where the police and fire trucks were there and Santa Claus was waving. So stuff like this in our neighborhood is totally understandable. And you know what? We need more of this holiday cheer.
I guess that's true. And
maybe
part
I'm
of it is
naive.
I wonder if some of this is time determinant. I wonder if it's different at 7 o'clock, right? If this person had been doing this between, let's say, 10 p.m. and anytime after 10 p.m., it would have been infinitely more creepy and disturbing in a whole way. But I got to tell you, I mean, I am just deeply, deeply troubled by this. This idea, and I'm sure it was someone. Listen, I'm fairly certain it was somebody who was doing this to act benign, right? If they had been walking around with a group of gingerbread people, if there had been carolers or somebody in a Santa suit, Santa and the gingerbread man and a couple of people, men and women dressed as elves. That would have been something else.
Those costumes are probably more expensive. Maybe the gingerbread costume was on sale. It's new. It's
I love
chic.
how you're inventing a backstory for this person here.
Because I really want to believe that they didn't have any nefarious purposes. They really just wanted to spread some holiday cheer. It could be someone who maybe has some mental. They think through, process things differently from a mental standpoint, and maybe they thought, okay, this would be fun. I want to just bring some cheer to the neighborhood.
I'm gonna do an obscure, not a semi-obscure reference from Miracle on 34th Street. Did you ever see the original Miracle on 34th Street with young Natalie Wood?
It's a black and white movie, so no.
Oh. They did try to colorize it at one point. Anyway, there's a character in there, the Macy's department store psychologist. Why Macy's had a psychologist, I don't know. But he goes on and he does these diagnoses of these people and essentially says that Kris Kringle is crazy. And I feel myself in that position where I'm trying to diagnose this person. Maybe he's just like some of those men in Washington. Maybe he's just a little crazy. Here's what I'm going to put it out there for all of you. You can tweet at me at Andrew_Langer, Langer, at Andrew_Langer. You can also, I'm going to throw you into this mix, Patrice, at Patrice Pinkfile on Twitter. Disturbed, concerned by this, or are you joyful about Santa Arlington gingerbread man walking around? We've got more coming up. It's 7:40. So this is something that popped up. Our friend Patrice Kim Klasick had put up a link on her social media about this calendar that a beer company. What is it called? Ultra Conservative Dad's Ultralight Beer is putting out a calendar of conservative women, pictures of conservative women, some in, shall we say, slightly more daring poses or more daring outfits than others, right? You've got, Dana Lash, Dana Lash with a couple of guns on the gun range. You've got Kim Klacik looking very fetching, but not wearing anything too risque. And then you've got Riley Gaines in a bikini. I got this piece here in the Daily Signal. Rachel Del Giudice, I don't know how to pronounce her last name. I apologize, Rachel. But she is unhappy about this calendar. She thinks that conservatives should do better, that this is essentially softcore pornography, and that given how young men get exposed to pornography at ages of as young as 8, perhaps we should be doing better here. Your thoughts here?
This is not the first time we've seen a pinup calendar. It's not the first time we've seen the hottest list in politics. By the way, I think it was The Hill or Politico. One of them used to do the most beautiful people on Capitol Hill list every year. So I think it's a much to do of nothing.
Yes.
Listen, a calendar featuring beautiful women, the conservative movement, it's meant for adults. So guys, keep that. Give it to your brothers or your friends as like a gag gift. The women chose to pose in the a sudsy bath in a bikini or lingerie. That's kind of your choice, not my taste. I wouldn't do it, but I'm not gonna poo-poo on something like this.
I remember the jockeying for position when one of the conservative blogs used to do its hottest conservative women list, and people, trying to move up in the rankings, the power rankings, as it were. As I pointed out, listen, I'm as you are, in favor of women's empowerment. They're making these choices. They feel comfortable doing this. Let them go ahead and do this, and they're getting paid to do it as well. And
Exposure.
I think it goes, and it get right, but it also, yes, in more ways than one. A little cold in there. But anyway, the other part of this, of course, is that this is something that conservative women can and should do, because we know the left can't do it because their women are men.
Their women are Dylan Mulvaney.
Yes.
Their women are
Sam Britton.
Oh, Sam Britton.
The secretary, not the secretary. Is it the Surgeon General of the United States?
No. Secretary. I forget the secretary, but yes, that who's a transgender person.
Yes.
There are a lot of the women on the left, the women of the year on the left. They tend to be biological men. Leah Thomas is another example. So I actually love the idea of promoting women, not with no qualifier, women, and that belongs to biological women, but women, and beautiful women at that.
By the way, the tagline on this is we can do better. If we truly want to change the culture, build strong families, and eliminate wokeness, we must. How about this? It starts with empowering women to act on their own behalf. They have recognizing that women have agency, and that and celebrating beauty and strength. You referenced earlier calendars in the past. G. Gordon Liddy used to have his stacked and packed calendar, which was it was notorious, certainly. But nevertheless, it was about empowering women, celebrating self-defense, and celebrating beauty. Listen.